It's 10 o'clock, so why don't we go ahead and get started? So I'll call the meeting of the CCS Governing Board to order at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, January 11th. Beth, will you please take the roll call?
I'll go by library name. If you could state your first and last name, please. Algonquin.
Here, Sarah Murray.
Carrie.
Diane McNulty.
Crystal Lake.
Becky Fiolick.
Des Plaines.
Joe Bonell.
Ela.
Lauren Rosenthal.
Evanston. Back to that. Fox River Valley. Fremont.
Hear me?
Yes, thank you, Scott. Glencoe.
Andy Kim.
Glenview. Grays Lake.
Tim Longo.
Highland Park.
Heidi Smith.
Huntley. Indian Trails.
Ryan Shepherd.
Lake Forest.
David Sullivan.
Lake Villa.
Mick Jacobson.
Lincolnwood.
Josephine Tucci.
McHenry.
Leslie Jakacki.
Morden Grove.
Em Leffler.
Niles, Maine.
Victoria Pickwa Luz.
Thank you. Northbrook.
Kate Hall.
Palatine.
Jeannie Dilger.
Park Ridge.
Joanna Bertucci.
Prospect Heights.
Alex de Sloth Todd.
Round Lake. Round Lake. Warren Newport.
Here, sorry about that. I was muted. I am here from Round Lake, Jim DiDonato.
Thank you, Jim. Warren Newport.
We're back. Eight years in the making since I got here. Ryan Livergood.
Wilmette.
Anthony Austin.
Winnetka.
Courtney Volney for Monica Dombrowski.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Sign Benton.
Robin Smith.
I'm going to circle back in case I missed anyone. Evanston.
Heather Norborg.
Thank you, Heather. Fox River Valley. Glenview. And Huntley. No Fox. Okay. And for visitors?
Sue Reinders from Mount Prospect.
Thank you, Sue. And for CCS, we have Rebecca Malinowski, Deborah Witchmeyer, and Beth Stoneburner.
Hi, just letting you know that I'm in for Cindy Rademacher today.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed Niles going back. Victoria, right? I have you.
Correct. Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Beth, for taking the roll call. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda? Okay. And I have the wrong view on. I have the speaker view, so let me put this on so I can see any hands, but please just jump in. Okay, seeing none, I don't see that any members of the public are present. So as you heard, we have Sue Reinders attending. She'll be with us for the beginning of the meeting. Welcome, Ryan. High five, man, and Warren Newport back to the table. And welcome, David Celeb, the interim director of Lake Forest. Thank you for joining us, and also our guests who are representing their library directors today. So the next thing, unless anyone has anything to add, we'll keep going. All right, on to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion for approval of the items listed on the consent agenda, unless there's anything that anyone would ask to remove.
Kate Hall.
So moved.
Okay, I heard Lauren move, and let's make Kate the second. How about that?
Sounds great.
Thank you so much, Beth.
Algonquin.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Carrie,
Yes.
Crystal Lake,
Yes.
Des Plaines,
Yes.
Ela,
Yes.
Evanston,
Yes.
Fox River Valley,
Yes.
Fremont. I'm sorry, Amy, thank you.
Yes, sorry, internet went down. I'm here now.
Thank you. Fremont,
Yes.
Glencoe,
Yes.
Glenview, Grays Lake,
Yes.
Highland Park,
Sorry, those Butterfingers again. Yes, thank you.
Huntley, Indian Trails,
Yes.
Lake Forest,
Yes.
Lake Villa,
Yes.
Lincolnwood,
Yes.
McHenry,
Yes.
McHenry, sorry, thank
Yes.
you. Morton Grove,
Yes.
Niles, Maine,
Yes.
Northbrook,
Yes.
Palatine,
Yes.
Park Ridge,
Yes.
Prospect Heights,
Oh, yeah.
Round Lake,
Yes.
Warren Newport,
Abstain.
Wilmette,
Yes.
Winnetka,
Yes.
Zion Bedford.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you so much, Beth. On to business, our potential members. We have an action before us in support of Mount Prospect Public Library membership. So I know this is included in your packet. Sue had sent a copy of the approved IGA in the mail so that we could move forward with that should the motion carry. I guess we need a motion first. So the background on this is to spell out the details for Mount Prospect joining CCS in the future. I would entertain a motion to approve this and then we can have further discussion.
I move to approve.
Oh, Joe moved and a second.
I'll
Jeannie
take
seconds.
Jeannie said, oops, sorry, Kate. Man, you got to be, you and I, we're slow today with our unmuting. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion?
This is the part where I just want to say I'm so excited and kudos, Sue, on that like super awesome report. Anyone else that joins, we should just give it to them. Be like, here, this is what you need to prepare to convince everyone, your board, your staff, everyone.
That's true. We should keep that on file.
I actually sent it to Rails too, because I'm like, you could strip out the, the specifics of this and just use it as a template for anyone else.
I did notice in the write-up, though, I think from CCS, that it said that Warren Newport would be responsible for all of the costs associated with Mount Prospect joining. I think it was probably a template that particular part didn't get changed. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Pam, I was trying to sneak it in, get Warren Newport to cover.
Ryan, you didn't know that you're in charge of paying for everyone
I missed
now.
That. I wasn't as thorough as I needed to be with that review.
Each incoming library pays for the next library.
Pay it
That's not
forward.
fair. We need a small library number 30 then.
It's great. And hey, I just realized I was remiss in reading the suggested motion before I asked for a first and a second. So just for the record, that's approving the resolution that was included in our packet, 2023-01 regarding Mount Prospect Public Library membership. We've got that for the record. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll turn it over to Beth for the vote, please.
I'll start with Des Plaines,
Yes.
Ela,
Yes.
Evanston,
Yes.
Fox River Valley,
Yes.
Fremont,
Yes.
Glencoe,
Yes.
Glenview, Grays Lake,
Yes.
Highland Park,
Yes.
Huntley, Indian Trails,
Yes.
Lake Forest,
Yes.
Lake Villa,
Yes.
Lincolnwood,
Yes.
McHenry,
Yes.
Morton Grove,
Yes.
Niles, Maine,
Yes.
Northbrook,
Enthusiastically, yes.
Palatine,
Yes.
Park Ridge,
Yes.
Prospect Heights,
I guess.
Round Lake,
Yes.
Warren Newport,
Yes.
Wilmette,
Yes.
Winnetka.
Yes. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Zion Benton,
Yes.
Algonquin,
Yes. Welcome back, Sue.
Perry, Carrie,
Yes.
and Crystal Lake.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion-
Hey, thanks, everybody.
Yay.
Won't darken your door again until later this year. So
Come
Ryan,
back anytime, Sue.
yeah, Ryan, best of luck with your migration. Please tell me all the tips I need.
Yeah, sure.
All right, I'm going to drop off. Have a great meeting. Talk to you all later.
Bye,
Thanks,
Sue.
Sue. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. So we'll have the IGA countersigned, and Diane and I will sign the resolution. So that is all set. Thank you. We'll move on then to Warren Newport. I understand that the management team orientation took place yesterday, and tomorrow is a kickoff call for CCS and III. Deborah, Ryan, anything you'd add for our update?
I don't think we have any further updates on our end. We had a great meeting earlier this week. CCS is super pumped to start working with Warren Newport. They have an amazing team, so we are energized and ready to get going.
I was just going to add that the CCS team, we've been incredibly impressed with the CCS team and this entire process so far. And I feel really good about this migration. Some of you know, I used to work in the vendor world for Cersei Dynex, and so I know a little bit about the other side of the migrating to a new system. And I think we're in good hands. Obviously, there'll be some issue, minor issues here and there, but I feel good about it. So thank you to the CCS team. Really impressed so far.
I'm going to knock wood for you, Ryan, just in case. Got it. Thank you so much. Okay. Next on the agenda is our office move lease, and I believe Rebecca has an update for us.
Yes. So I did include in your packet a potential motion, but I don't think we're at a point yet where we're ready to ask for that motion. Yesterday, Beth and I met with our attorney from KTJ, Dennis Walsh, and our real estate agent, Jonathan Metzel from Cushman Wakefield. And I did include the lease separately in the email to LibAdmin. And you'll see that Dennis, our attorney, has some very strongly worded comments throughout, particularly around like reciprocity when it comes to liability, limitations on liability, all that sort of thing. So we will be having a call tomorrow with all parties. So our attorney, our real estate agent, and the building's representatives to see if we can iron some of those out. So as I noted in your packet previously, when we discussed this at executive committee, technically executive committee has the authority with the updates to our bylaws to approve a contract. However, in talking with executive committee, there was say concern, but the feeling was, this is a long-term agreement that affects all of CCS. So there would be an additional level of comfort of having it approved at the governing board level. So I mean, our timeline for the project is fine at this stage. The work that has to be done to the space is pretty minimal to prep it for us. But I don't think that we want to wait until our April meeting for governing board approval. So for this body, and for our subset of our executive committee pals, one, assuming that we get everything straightened out on the lease, what is the best way to move forward? Would governing board be open to calling a special meeting specifically to review and approve the lease, or sending some additional instruction to executive committee on what they're looking for in the lease? I guess is kind of the first question. I'm happy to call a special meeting. Again, I don't want to put pressure on the folks in executive committee that don't want it. But if governing board wants to put pressure on them, that's fine with me.
Agreed.
Would the executive committee feel better approving this contract if we discuss it as a governing board now and we know what the issues are, and that if they're resolved to the satisfaction of our attorney, that governing board would stand behind executive committee in approving it? Or is that still too much pressure for executive committee?
I think that's okay. I think, the feeling I got is we just didn't want to be heavy-handed making this major decision without the support of the governing committee. Anyone else on the executive committee have anything they'd add for that perspective?
Yeah, Heidi, I agree with you on that. I mean, I think as long as the governing board here is comfortable with it, then I think as the executive committee, I personally would be comfortable moving forward. I think my main question, Rebecca, and I kind of alluded to this to you in an email that I sent, is how, so from our broker's perspective, how does our broker see the issues that our attorney is bringing up in regards to kind of what is standard and what is seen in leasing agreements? Because, and I said this, but my opinion is that sometimes attorneys go a little bit overboard on some of these things, and they're because that's their job. Their job is to make sure that we're not exposed to risk. But I think they take it to sometimes to the nth degree, where it's like, okay, you're out like worrying about things that truly are not going to happen and are outside the scope of what is pretty typical in a broker, that a broker would say, this is standard language that we see in every lease agreement. So I'm just kind of curious, without being in part of those conversations, like, how are you seeing that? Or what has our broker said in regards to some of this?
Well, I'm wondering if you were actually on our call yesterday, Brian. So our attorney is very focused on like the what ifs, like, well, what if we did breach, like, what if we were in default? And then they take all of these really extreme remedies. And I'm like, well, we're not really going to be in default because we're going to pay our rent. So, and that's where our broker's coming from. From his perspective, the language in the lease is very typical. We'd be unlikely to get better terms elsewhere when it comes to these sort of like legal liability breach type things. So on our call yesterday, essentially, if you did look through the lease, the attorney's comments are kind of the same throughout. This is very one-sided. This should be reciprocal. On our call yesterday, my sort of mantra was, yes, I understand. And philosophically, I agree with you, Dennis. And I think we should absolutely bring it up with their attorneys. I'm not sure this would be a deal killer for me based on just like, again, like how contracts with corporations and consumers work in the world. So our real estate agent does seem fairly comfortable. There's a few things that he specifically called out that he wanted changed that he agreed with Dennis on. And we have highlighted those. But for a lot of that stuff, it's like, yeah, I mean, they're not going to say, yes, we'll be liable for anything that happens in the building and you can sue us for everything we're worth. And so that was the next thing that I wanted to talk with this group about is, we bring our attorney in for counsel, we hear him. I understand there is some inherent exposure and risk in these sections that he's outlining, but I am okay with them because we're dealing with, a very large, well-respected building management owner company that if they were just kicking people out of their spaces left and right and charging them, rent after they've taken all their furniture, like, these things aren't happening. These are not concerns that I actually have.
Yeah, and so I think, you know, that was kind of my personal, you know, opinion, is that it gets a point. I think we've all been in that situation with attorneys where, you know, they look at this stuff and then they give you, I mean, and that is their job, is to look after all those things. But at some point you have to say, okay, but what is the likelihood that that's going to happen? I had an attorney tell me once, and I thought this was great. You know, he said, really, the point of a contract is just to simply have it in writing that you could throw in the drawer and never look at again, because everything works the way it's supposed to, and you never like ever have to go back and refer to it. And so if, like, as long as the big framework is there and we're just like kind of like looking at some of these, you know, kind of like finer points, I personally am comfortable maybe assuming that risk and saying, oh, yeah, we understand that it's there and let's just move forward with it. But that's my perspective.
I agree with Brian.
Thank you, Kate. And I saw in the chat that Lauren had also said, I agree with Heidi and Brian, but I think that was about the executive committee taking responsibility for the vote to avoid a special meeting. Do any other members of the governing board have questions about the lease as it was shared? That, you know, such that the executive committee, obviously with Rebecca's lead, can make sure that those are considered. Any concerns you have? Okay, so I don't think there's necessarily an action to take, but just to say that it seems to be the consensus of the governing board that when the lease is in its final iteration, that the executive committee will approve it as recommended by the director. Okay, let's move on then. Good stuff. Next on the agenda is e-commerce providers. And we do have an action we're requesting. So in the report, Rebecca and the team had summarized their their continuing communication or lack thereof with PSIS, as well as next steps possible with ePay. And thank you so much for being the first library to step forward with this, Lauren. So Rebecca's recommendation at this time is to rescind the requirement that all libraries have to use Comprise for e-commerce through PowerPack. She also recommended that libraries individually determine if they would like to offer online payments. So the motion, this motion as recommended, is to rescind the requirement that all members of CCS use Comprise as an e-commerce gateway. Would entertain a motion for discussion and approval potentially of this motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Diane.
Second.
Second, thank you, Lauren. Any questions or further discussion?
I don't have a question. Sorry, Scott.
Just about, you mentioned that, or mentioned the report that if CCS could have an account too, so that if a library didn't have their own online payment, then CCS could take that payment to keep the patrons, you know, solvent or whatever. Would that be then, if a library didn't have their own payment method online, would they then have a link that would direct them to the CCS payment portal?
Yes. So, so I am in the process of setting up an ePay account with the state treasurer so we can do some additional testing and all of that. So if we chose to then sort of use that in a production environment, it would, yes, we could provide a link we could integrate it into the PowerPack profile of any library that wanted us to, but also we could just as easily not integrate it into anybody's PowerPack profile. And there is like sort of a standalone link, although I'd have to, if it's not using the integration, it's not going to automatically update the patrons account. So we'd have to look at that. But my thinking is it would be integrated in the CCS account. So non-CCS patrons could log in and pay fines. And then if, for example, Fremont didn't want to offer online payments and just said like, I don't care, like just make it work for patrons, we'd put that same integration in the Fremont pack Whereas if Evanston's like, oh, we're going to do our own, we have our own thing, we wouldn't put it in the Evanston pack, and Evanston would use their own integration or their own link external to.
So then that, just because my brain still isn't aware of the fact that it's 2023, so it's a little fuzzy.
Very confusing.
Right? So I just want to make sure I understand, like I get the whole rescinding, that's fine. But so if we, like CCS will no longer have a contract with TSYS that we can join and comprise, we'll have to contract with them individually now, unless we want to move to ePay. I'm seeing Lauren nod. I just want to make sure I'm telling my finance manager the right thing.
Yeah, so I was working with Comprise before the holiday, and then they sort of dropped off. So I just emailed them again to clarify that I would like both opt-in pricing for each library for Comprise. So if you want to just say, I want to continue my contract, you can just kind of continue with the contract that's already in place, maybe, if they'll let us do that. And then I've also asked about just doing like a short-term renewal to give libraries the opportunity to kind of do some more exploration and decision-making. And they have not answered me, but I will continue and give you an email update later this week.
And is it the end of February, or is it the beginning of February that the contract ends?
One moment, please.
Because that will change my level of my priority levels with it.
Yes, hang on one second. And this is maybe not helpful. I think it was the middle of February, but let me look at Comprise.
Okay. So like not in 20 days, but like.
It expires 2/22/23. And thank you, Beth, for digging that out of the dungeon of files. I appreciate that.
Dungeon. I want a file dungeon.
Yeah, file dungeon.
So if that's the
so I will call over there today to Comprise. Sorry, Diane?
So if that's the case, we either have to go with them or go with somebody else in a quick turnaround here. Is that?
If you want online payments, right? If this is, if you're taking online payments on your self checks, this is not, that will stay unchanged.
Oh, okay. That's what I wanted to clarify because.
Yes. Okay.
And yeah, so any in-house stuff you have, whether it's self check or if you're using like a point of sale with ePay or Comprise or anyone, that will continue. This is just for that Lincoln Power Pack that says pay fines online. And then Diane, to sort of a second answer to the question that you are starting to ask, and then I'll stop so you can finish asking your question. The CCS account that we set up with ePay could also be used as a stopgap for libraries. Like if you just want to use the CCS account for 6 months while you figure out what you want to do or see kind of how that affects things, we can do that as well. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just concerned about our in-house, and I'm hoping if we switch to ePay that they can use some of the same equipment so we don't have to buy new, but we totally understand if we have to do that too. But we're not happy with TSYS at all. So anything we can do to get rid of them is a plus.
Well, at this point, we found there are 2 equipment options for use with ePay. One is their kiosk system, which has a long lead time, or the other thing is we can just provide our own tablets, and we're doing our own tablets. So you can use your own equipment.
Thank you, Lauren. Scott, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, so if we have to go off on our own to find a vendor for online payments, how do we know they're going to integrate with Polaris? How do we set that up? Does Polaris have a list of vendors they already are integrated with? That kind of seems like a big component for the patron side of things so that it seamlessly and automatically credits their account. So how does that work?
I will send an email out later today or tomorrow morning with that list. They do have one. I should have put that in the packet. I apologize. There is a variety. Originally, we specifically looked at Comprise and Envisionware because they offered equipment for both. So you could do patron integration through PowerPack and staff point of sale through Polaris. But they do offer more that are just integration through PowerPack. So since it seems like point of sale integration hasn't been a big selling point for our members, that opens things up a little. Lauren, would you say, based on your experience and general knowledge, that the ePay pricing is perhaps hard to beat?
Yes, I think the ePay pricing is very hard to beat. It's significantly less, and the PCI compliance portion, the treasurer's office is handling the PCI compliance. I mean, you still have to do the smallest questionnaire, but it's the simplest PCI compliance I've found, and zero PCI compliance fees. Right? None of this TSIS. I'm gonna sock 150. I'm gonna sneak in $159 charge for PCI compliance. No, it's all included. The treasurer covers it.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I don't want to require members to use anything based on what we've seen with patron behavior, et cetera. But if you are looking to offer online payments, it does seem like ePay, with the integration that Polaris built after we went live, is a really strong option in terms of pricing. In terms of functionality, it's similar to Comprise. I don't think either interface is like a slam dunk for the patron, but both are entirely usable. And that ePay pricing is pretty good.
I just have a quick question for clarification. So for the CCS account for non-CCS patrons, and then you said also for libraries that did not want to offer payment through the PowerPack, right?
If your library is just like, I don't want to deal with it.
Right. So does that money all just then stay with CCS?
Yeah, and that's, so that would be completely opt-in. Libraries can do it independently. I know we had some discussions at a previous meeting where some libraries were like doing a lot with payments and some were not. So I'd like to offer a really hands-off options for libraries if anyone wants it, but I fully understand that that won't work for everyone.
Sure. Just wanted to make sure I understood correctly. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are any other
questions. So yeah, actually one more, Heidi. So if our library decides that we don't want to deal with this because we just don't get enough payments to make it worth it, and we want to do the CCS option, do we let you know that now, Rebecca? I mean, so you can gauge interest, or when?
Because there's no monthly fees for ePay. It's all just based on the cost for ePay, or just based on the transaction. I'll be continuing with the setup. And then once I have the setup, I will, which should be soon. I have to like sign another paper, but I was like, what? Sign it. And then governing board's like, what the hell are you doing, Rebecca? So I will send out an email and you can opt in via email that way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And just a comment on that follow-up, Pam, we are not going to do online. We've asked to be removed from that. And I will say, if you're dealing with TSIS, we had two accounts. One was for the online and we canceled that, but they're keeping it there just in case we change our mind and want to pay them a lot of money still. But
yeah, we don't bring in that much via that way. So I mean, for us, it was, I mean, we're losing money every month that they charge us. So it's
we were too. We were too. That's why we're not going to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's definitely an option that we are considering. And I mean, even just knowing the money is going to CCS, I feel better about it. I mean, CCS is for the benefit of everybody. So if we lose an account and the money goes to CCS, I'm not going to cry over it.
Thank you, Sarah. And I see that Scott added in the chat that at Fremont, they've been using ePay, JetPay, POS equipment, point of sale for many years, very satisfied, even though it doesn't integrate with Polaris. It's easy and inexpensive. So connect with Scott if you'd like additional information about that. So we have a motion on the,
I'm
please,
sorry,
Lauren.
can I just, a little point of clarification. What Scott is describing is the card swipe equipment at the desk, correct? That doesn't integrate with Polaris. That is not an option that CCS is considering. We're only considering either the kiosk option, which does integrate with Polaris, or the use of your own equipment tablet option, which again integrates with Polaris. Right, Rebecca? What we'll be doing is integrating.
So I want to make a little clarification between what CCS is doing and what ELA is doing. CCS, I am only setting up an account that will allow card not present transactions for online payments through PowerPack. You have some additional options that I have not really looked into, like the kiosks and the equipment. I haven't looked at that. So if they say it integrates and it's essentially card not present because you're typing in the number, then I would 100% agree with Lauren and defer to her knowledge on this. But like the actual swipes, as like a point of sale swipe, does not integrate. And I think Scott told us last time, they just manually update the patron's account after they accept the payment, easy peasy. So yes, and we can also set up a group demo with ePay too. I wanted to move forward with Lauren and get an account like set up, but I'm happy to set up a demo. The treasurer's office has been super easy to work with and really communicative.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, even though there are lots of options for in-person point of sale, kiosk, et cetera, the motion on the table is to rescind the requirement that all CCS members have to use Comprise as an e-commerce gateway and PowerPack.
Correct.
Okay, so if there's not any further discussion, okay, seeing none, we'll take the vote. Beth, please.
Okay. I'll just state that Joanna Bertucci chatted me that she had to drop off at 10:30, so I'll mark Park Ridge as absent for this vote.
Thank you.
And I'm going to start with Lake Villa, please.
Yes.
Lincolnwood?
Yes.
McHenry?
Yes.
Morton Grove?
Yes.
Niles, Maine?
Yes.
Northbrook?
Yes.
Palatine?
Yes.
Prospect Heights?
Yes.
Round Lake?
Yes.
Warren Newport?
Yes.
Wilmette?
Yes.
Winnetka?
Yes.
Winnetka?
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Zion Benton?
Yes.
Algonquin?
Yes.
Carey?
Yes.
Crystal Lake?
Yes.
Des Plaines?
Yes.
Ela?
Yes.
Evanston?
Yes.
Fox River Valley?
Yes.
Fremont? Fremont?
Yes.
Thank you, Scott. Glencoe?
Yes.
Glenview? Grays Lake?
Yes.
Highland Park?
Yes.
Huntley? Indian Trails?
Yes.
And Lake Forest?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have our innovative updates. We'll start with performance issues, and I'll turn it over to Deborah.
Sure. We had a lot of innovative updates in the packet, so I'll highlight a couple of updates and action items before we open up to questions and comments. So a quick update on our recent system issues. As noted in the packet, our production system issues have disappeared over the last month thanks to some heightened monitoring on the side of innovative support. So we're really happy about that. The one last lingering performance issue we've still been running into over the past few weeks is our training server problems. So this morning, Innovative essentially rebuilt our training server. They completed a fresh copy of production to training, re-completed the upgrade to 7.3, and at an initial glance, this resolved the issues that we were experiencing there. So we are in a tentatively good place. In the packet was our first round look at patron usage of e-content in the catalog. So as I mentioned in the packet, the recent performance issues we've been experiencing in October and November were tied to the e-content integration specifically for Overdrive and Access 360. So we started gathering some data on how patrons are interacting with e-content in the catalog. So we can just have that data at our fingertips and understand how important it is and what's actually happening after we do this work. So I do just want to open it up to see if anyone had any questions or comments on that report or wanted to comment on the recent performance issues.
Deborah, is it it was very helpful to get all of that information. Is, with the Overdrive issues, is it because we have multiple consortia? Is that where the breakdown is happening, right? I mean, I know we've talked about this in the past. I just want to make sure that it's clear. So it isn't that we're adding so many records, it's that we have these multiple. And would that problem go away if like everyone was under one consortium?
I don't think so. To answer that last question, I think, yes, we have a lot of e-content, more than most Polaris customers. I think the real issue at play is the number of separate Advantage accounts that we have. Since every library has their own Advantage accounts, that's sort of like a separate sync for each individual library. So rather than, sync once for Digital Library, sync another time for North Suburban, Polaris is syncing Algonquin, Cary, Des Plaines, Crystal Lake, all separately. And because we have, now 29 libraries with Overdrive subscriptions, that's 29 sets of records that have to sync. And there's thousands upon thousands of titles for each library. So I don't think, all being in the same Overdrive consortia would particularly help because every library has Advantage copies and it would still all have to sync them.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
And, we're hoping that Innovative, they have made some changes to how the sync process happens to improve the efficiency of it, fix some things, it broke some things. So they are kind of finessing that on their end. And we do have hopes, and we've been pressuring Innovative that at some point, sort of the infrastructure as a whole will be updated by them to long-term resolve these problems.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments for Deborah regarding some of these performance issues? Okay, Rebecca, forgive me, Deborah, keep us going, please.
All right, I'll keep chugging along.
Thank you.
So the next innovative topic was notices. So back in the fall, our libraries and other hosted customers started seeing an increase in the number of email and text notices that were bouncing back or not being delivered to patrons. This is kind of a across the board problem as we see, email and text providers just tightening spam and security filters, which is great because those spam emails and texts are really annoying. Unfortunately, our library notices are being caught up in those changes on the part of the vendors. So Innovative has provided CCS with and other Polaris customers with sort of this like task list of things that we need to do to help reduce the likelihood that our emails and text are be blocked by providers. So one of the key steps is to ensure that every library is sending notices from a valid email address. So currently with CCS libraries, most are using noreply@ccslib.org as the email that sends out notices. That is not a true inbox. So we cannot monitor undeliverable emails and do the patron maintenance associated with taking out invalid email and text carriers from patron accounts. So based on this, CCS is planning to transition all of our libraries to using a notice email that is a true inbox so that either CCS or your team can complete the maintenance needed to, again, remove those invalid email addresses from patron accounts. So we have some work to do drafting procedures for managing this workflow, but currently our plan is that by March 1, we will transition all libraries currently using no reply at ccslib.org to either notices at ccslib.org. This would be a CCS managed inbox. Our team would review undeliverable emails, all of those bounce backs, and then complete the patron account maintenance by removing invalid emails, switching patron notifications, etc. The other option is if a library wants to, they can provide their own email address for notices under your domain. So like notices@northbrook.info. And then your team could then be in charge of managing the patron accounts, removing those emails, and so on. So again, we are drafting basic procedures for what that workflow would be. We plan to review those with the CERC ILL advisory group to get their feedback before we share it out with staff. And once we have those procedures kind of finessed and finalized, we'll do sort of a more full announcement of that change out to your library so that we can get the updated emails in place by March.
So Deborah, is it I think it's our recommendation that libraries do use their own email and domain so they can have sort of more knowledge of the process. And when patrons come in and they're like, why didn't I get my notice? They're more familiar with all of those changes that could potentially have been made to a patron record. Is that correct?
I think that would be our preference. There's a lot of nuances in those undeliverable emails. I've been monitoring bounce backs for CCSB patrons for the past several weeks, and there's lots of different messages in there. Lots of patrons like to reply to them with questions. So I think our preference and recommendation is that your libraries would provide an email address, but we know that that might not be possible for everyone. So for those libraries who would not be able to provide an email address to use for notices, CCS will swap you out and use one of ours. But again, with that option, you lose that opportunity to interact with your own patrons, and CCS would be completing that work for you.
Thanks.
So with this, do you have a sense then, since you've been monitoring it for the last few weeks with the CPL patrons, what kind of volume, like how much time are you spending just to kind of get a sense from like how many CPL patrons are in there and how many bounce backs are we getting? So I can kind of try and figure out like how much staff time are we going to need to allocate for this?
Yeah.
Is there a way to?
So we're getting about, and like, just to be clear, so we haven't been monitoring this at all for the past 5 years. So I would imagine at first there's going to be a higher volume once we start looking at them than there would be once we're doing regular maintenance. We're getting like fewer than 10 a day.
Okay.
I reached out to a couple libraries who are currently using their own email address. Niles is one of them. The Niles CERC team said they get like 1 to 4 undeliverable emails a day.
Okay.
So it's not a really high volume. I would anticipate probably an hour or less.
I was just like, are we going to have to find like half a day every day for someone to do this? So that's reassuring.
I hope not.
Yeah.
And switching over to this email will also allow CCS to identify like vendor specific, like temporary blocks. So that's been kind of an ongoing issue where like Verizon all of a sudden decides that they're going to blacklist Innovative's email servers. So this is really helpful for us so that we can kind of catch that right away, report to Innovative so that they can work to resolve that. But yeah, it should be hopefully fewer than 10 emails a day. And I would estimate roughly an hour or so of staff time. But we're going to do a little bit more focused timing of how long it's taking us to maintain them once we have those procedures set. So we'll be able to share that out with all of you.
That's great. It's helpful to have the rough estimate though.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Deborah on notices? All right, take us on to Vega Discovery, please, Deborah. Thank you.
All right, so no new updates beyond what was in the packet. We recently completed another round of user testing for Vega. So the findings were included in your packet. Those findings will be sent on to Innovative today. We do have a couple of sort of development requests for them that came out of the user testing. So again, those were outlined in the packet. It was a recommendation of the UX group that we are not ready to do any kind of soft launch with patrons until Innovative takes a look again at those usability concerns that came out of the testing. So again, we're going to bring those to Innovative later this afternoon and start talking about what it would take to implement those. So I'm happy to take questions over the report or the update in the packet.
I would just take this opportunity to add a point of clarification. We talked since our last governing board meeting, we've talked about this a couple times at executive committee, and we are continuing in the Vega Discover program as an opportunity for exploration and advocacy and feedback. And we are going to scale back a little bit on kind of our deep dive into the development process that is happening at governing board, because at this time, that level of detail just doesn't seem relevant for this group since we're not asking for a decision. With the timing of the Warren Newport project, we're really focused on helping our new member onboard. And then, as time allows, participating in these additional initiatives to continue to make the best of what could be a great product, but not, as Deborah said, committing to any certain timeline for a soft launch, which would just be an opportunity to gather more feedback. So I love the comparison that Kathleen and company did against PowerPack, and I think it provides some really useful data for Innovative to help them understand our concerns and how they can improve the product. So we think this is an awesome opportunity for our team to continue to learn and grow and to share that knowledge and advocate on behalf of consortia, kind of just in the marketplace.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or discussion or comments about Vega Discover? Okay. You know what? I got to click through all the screens to make sure there's no hands. We're good. Let's move on to reports. Presidents, no president's report. How about from our secretary, Diane?
No report.
Thank you. And our treasurer, Lauren.
Just a note that the Budget and Finance Committee will be meeting next Wednesday.
Thank you very much. And now to our executive director, Rebecca.
I am happy to take questions on anything we have not yet covered.
I don't see any hands. All right, well, thank you, Rebecca. Anything else you'd add? Shall I keep going?
I will shout out the work that Bob was doing with Grayslake, and shout out Grayslake for that. They're doing a cool mapping project. There's a short blurb about it on page 93 of your packet, but I know historically this group's been down with maps. So they're doing a lot of work with student cards, and I'm so excited for anything CCS can do to help expand access to the student population. So thanks, Tim, for working with Bob on that.
Thank you very much. So back to Deborah for any additional comments or questions about the committees and groups. And Deborah, anything you'd add? Of course.
Nothing particularly to highlight, but happy to take questions.
All right. Seeing none, if there is no opposition, then we will adjourn the meeting here at 10:55 a.m. Any speak now? We are adjourned. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.